I flew on Korean Air, which I think is a pretty decent airline. The flight from Tokyo to Seoul, I got on and I sat down, and every time I fly, I always use the same cheap move. I intentionally leave my seatbelt unbuckled when you're supposed to buckle it, in the hopes that a really hot flight attendant will come over and be like, here you go, sir, and like buckle it for me. And it usually never happens, but on this flight there were tons of really beautiful Korean flight attendants, and I was like, fuck yes, it's my time. And then I realized, and I sat down and I did my move, that in the entire plane I was sitting in the one section with a gay flight attendant. And that's fine, no problem. But the problem is, for me, is that for some reason gay men hate me even more than straight women. Which is pretty hard to pull off. So the guy was already pissed off standing there with this look on his face, and he's not going anywhere near my lap. He fucking hates me. So he's standing there and he's just like, Sir, could you buckle? And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, yeah, okay. So, sir, what? Tighten. I was like, okay. So I got to Korea, and I went there for the purpose of my cousin's wedding. He lives in Korea, he's an English teacher there, and he married a Korean woman. And we had a good time, he was there, his mother and father were there. But my aunt and uncle are very typical American travelers. They basically don't know what the fuck's going on anywhere they go. There's not an English-speaking place. Where's Denny's? And it's like, this is Seoul, a lot of culture. So the problem is that I live in Japan, he lives in Korea. They assume they're basically the same place. Oh, it's a common tongue. I'm like, no, it's not. So they kept asking me all these stupid questions. My aunt would be like, oh, Jamie, what's that Korean guy doing over there? He's writing on a piece of paper. What's he writing? Hang on, let me check. And of course, I don't speak Korean. And so I said to my aunt, I went over and I read it and it said, anyone who asks a series of questions from now on is going to be immediately shipped to North Korea. And that did not stop them. They then started asking me Korean words, and again, I don't know. How do you say this in Korean? How do you say this in Korean? How do you say this? I don't fucking know. So finally, they're like, how do you say thank you in Korean? I'm like, fuck me. And they had a very interesting rest of the trip in Korea. One thing that struck me as a little bit different too in Korea and Japan is spitting. How many people have been to Korea? Yeah, a lot of people, right? The spitting's a little off-putting. In Japan, people don't spit or whatever. You get a bug in your mouth, something like that, very dainty. There, they kind of dredge it up from like the bottom of the bronchioles, like, and like that. And for me, it took a little while. I've never been to Korea. I get there, I go to Seoul Station, I get out, and the first Korean person I see is going like that, right in the street. And I look, and there's a little Korean girl standing nearby, and she looks and she's like, good one, Grandma. So, after Korea, I moved on to Cambodia. How many people have been to Cambodia? Nice. So, I went to Angkor Wat for 3 days and did a tour of the temples. It's a very beautiful place. I think I had quite possibly the worst Cambodian tour guide on the fucking planet. We go through the temple and we're walking, and it's like 20, 30 minutes. He's not saying anything. He's a tour guide. He's not saying anything. So finally he stops and he looks at a wall and there's a picture of like a woman dancing. And he's like, that's a woman dancing. Alright. And so I say, these temples look pretty old, how old are they? He's like, kind of thinking, he's like, I think they're pretty old. Yeah, and Cambodia is a little bit more third world than maybe in some of the other countries in Asia, and I found this out in the countryside. I looked around and people ride a lot of scooters there or whatever, and I saw this one guy with his scooter, and on the back of his scooter, he's got 3 slaughtered pigs stacked up, 1, 2, 3, riding his bike to God knows where, the market or whatever. Now, that was the best example of scooter stacking I saw until I went to Thailand and saw 6 hookers on one scooter. And they were all hanging onto each other like water skiers. So they're all like kind of hanging over a little bit. It was fucked up. And Cambodia is a great place for those that have been there. I'm not going to recommend it to my friends, mainly because I don't want them to go there and find out really how fucking cheap their souvenirs were that I got them. Like, oh yeah, this is an authentic Cambodian silk scarf, $2. And so hopefully, they don't find that out. I moved on to Thailand after that. I was in Khao San Road. How many people been to Khao San Road? I know that. Where's all the gaijin? Right? Yeah, raise your hands. Filthy bastards. Yeah. Don't hide it. I don't care if your girlfriend's sitting next to you. Don't hide it. So, I went to Khao San Road, and many people mispronounce it. They say Koh San Road. Koh San Road. Thank you very much, Leonardo DiCaprio in the fucking beach. Don't listen to anything that guy says. It's Khao San Road. Cow is in the shit you don't find in the hamburgers there. Keep that in mind. It's a delayed reaction. I like that. Thanks. So I looked for a cheap hotel, and it's not hard to do there. And I go with the guy, and for the equivalent of about 1,000 yen, I got the David Carradine suite. And some people know, great. Kung Fu. And the guy shows me the room, and I'm looking, and it's fucking tiny and just gross or whatever, but I'm like, yeah, it's 1,000 yen. So I asked the guy, I'm like, this is near a lot of clubs and like noisy places and stuff. If I try to get to sleep, isn't it going to be like super noisy in here or whatever? And the guy literally just goes, no noise, no window. Okay. And then he's like, and you know where he fired? Asbestos. That's tremendous there, pal. So I left Thailand, and I left to go back to Japan or whatever. So basically I was leaving Southeast Asia and going and heading back to Japan, which is kind of like leaving Paris Hilton's 18th birthday party to come to my 18th birthday party. A lot less design. Boo? Oh, we got a boo in here? I like that. Boo? Is this a puppet show or something? Yeah, boo puppets. Anyway, so I got back to Japan, and I kind of realized, in my time away, that Japanese are kind of jumpy. A little bit kind of jumpy people, kind of like, whoa, like this, whoa, like this. And I think what sells the point is that if you bump somebody in Japan, they don't say like, oh, or something like that. They have like a whole fucking constructed sentence when you bump them. It's like, oh, bikurishita. Which in English would be like, holy shit, you scared me there for a second, I think I'm gonna get hit. I work at a private school, a private all-girls school with, I teach high school and junior high school. And my worst fear is seeing these students in public for a number of reasons. But the number one reason is that they notice everything that I do in public. So one day I was standing next to a vending machine, and it's a hot day, and I'm standing there drinking my CC lemon, and two students come walking by. And the next day at school, every single student's like, oh, Jamie Sensei, he loves CC lemon. CC lemon daisuki. And I'm like, well, it was just one. So then, the next week I'm at McDonald's drunk, gorging myself. It was like 10 a.m., I think, or something like that. And I see a group of students from club, and they see me sitting there like gorging my face or whatever. So then, of course, the next day at school again, oh, Jamie Sensei, maka daisuki mitai, man. You love McDonald's, man. He was shoveling it in. I'm like, you know what? If this is going to be like this, I'm going to make it work to my advantage. You want to spread fucking rumors? I'll show you rumors. So I went out, and I begged, and I pleaded, and I pulled out my money, and I found a really beautiful Japanese girl, and I was like, all I want you to do is come with me to my school and stand and wait for me when school finishes. And when I come out, pretend like I'm your boyfriend. And she's like, okay, 3万yen. I'm like, okay. So I get out of school, the whole school's watching. And I walk out, and she comes up, and hey, she earned her money. She links her arm up, pretends like she likes me. We're walking. I'm like, hell yeah. So the next day at school, I come back in expecting Jamie Sensei, he dates very beautiful Japanese women. Oh, cool. Yes. But instead I came back, and all the students and the principal and all the staff are like, oh, Jamie Sensei, he really loves expensive hookers. Which is only half true. Cheap. So, I think we've had a pretty hot summer. Would everyone agree? Yes. Sweating and nodding stupidly. Yes, Jamie, hurry up. And I think because of that, there's been a lot of kind of people in bad moods or kind of foul tempers on the train. Even Japanese people are usually pretty reserved, in my opinion. So I was on the train, and it was a very crowded train, and this woman is holding a very large portfolio like this, and it's very crowded, but she has, she probably should have held it against her, but she holds it like corners out, like a weapon. And it's like jamming this jamming this Japanese guy right in the ass. Like, the whole ride, though. I mean, the guy just kept turning around like, hit on it. And she's sitting there jamming him, and he's still just like, what the fuck? And I think he started getting a little bit pissed off. So finally, we get to Shibuya Station. The doors open, and the woman, again, with like full force, jabs him. And he fucking lost it. He turned around and he goes, yeah! Like that. Fucking karate kicks that shit right out of her hand. Pens everywhere. Fucking fashion magazines all over the platform. Everyone's watching. There's people scrambling around picking shit up for her. And I'm like, wow, holy shit. I was shocked. I mean, I've been in Japan for 5 years. That's the first time I've ever seen a Japanese person use karate. You guys have been a great audience for all of us. We appreciate it. Have a great night. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Awesome, very good, very cool.